Hey everybody, it's Mr. Marshall here at Stony Lane. Did you know that the U.S. is turning 250 years old? That's right, that's a pretty big birthday. So this is a series of videos all about the states that make the United States of America. So today, we're not going to focus on one state. We're going to focus on lots of states. And so I want to show you this map, and I want you to see something really funny looking about this map. The states that are highlighted because they have funny looking shapes. They have funny looking shapes. I'll show you what I mean. Did you ever see a pan like this? A frying pan? So the frying pan has its main part, and it's got the part here that you hold. That's called a panhandle. The panhandle. And some states are shaped so they look like they have a panhandle. They have the state and this like one piece that sticks out of it. Okay, let me show you what I mean. There are 9 states like this. Here's some of them. Like these are 3 states that have a panhandle sticking out the top. I mean, whoever decided that they need a panhandle? This is Idaho. This is Texas. West Virginia has a really skinny one. Right? And then there's some that are a little smaller. Like here, Connecticut. Connecticut looks like it has a little, just a tiny little panhandle sticking out. Nebraska's is kind of fatter. Oklahoma's is really long, and Florida's is really long too, right? These are called panhandles. These are called panhandles. Here's a couple others. This one is Alaska. It's got a really long panhandle. And on this picture you don't see it, but this is hundreds of miles, right? And then Maryland has a couple of funny looking panhandles on it. I don't know whoever decided on the shape of Maryland, but it's funny, right? These states are not perfectly shaped squares or anything like that. They all have stories. They all have stories on how they got their shapes. There's some states that have almost like smaller little panhandles. They're called boots, okay? Like these states have little tiny pieces sticking out of them. Minnesota, that's up on the top of the U.S., and so this little piece of Minnesota actually goes into Canada. Okay, Pennsylvania has a tiny little boot up on top. Missouri has a little boot that actually goes into another state, and actually I'll tell you another time, but like part of this boot is not even connected to Missouri. New Mexico, Alabama, they have boots on the bottom, right? And so it's pretty funny, right? So some of these panhandles and boots are made because of nature, right? So some of them are shaped that way because there are mountains or rivers that kind of become what's called a natural border between this state and this state next door. Okay? Sometimes the panhandle, like in Texas, is for political reasons because the people in this area just wanted to be part of Texas. And so they decided they were going to stay and be part of Texas. Okay? So there's all different reasons that these panhandles and these funny shapes happen. In fact, there's a book that became a TV series called How the States Got Their Shapes. It's got really interesting facts in it. Another thing to think about the shapes of these states is that if you look at the U.S. on the eastern side of the country, there's a lot more, I think, there's a lot more states that have funny looking shapes. Let's get that tuned in. Right? And then on the west, there are a lot more straight lines. Did you notice that? Why is that? Let me show you some examples. Like this is one that I showed you before, West Virginia. That's a really funny looking shape. That almost looks like, you spilled some paint and it just like spread all over the paper. Look at Maryland again. Maryland, like a lot of this is water, but like it's, there's all this like funny looking land there, right? Here's another one that's on the East Coast. That has a funny looking shape. This is Massachusetts. Nope. This is Massachusetts. Look at that. This is all water around here. And so these are like teeny tiny little islands all around Massachusetts. But it gives this state a funny looking shape. Here's another one. This is Michigan. Michigan is actually separated into 2 parts, right? There we go. 2 parts. It's the Lower Peninsula and the Upper Peninsula. And this here is one of the Great Lakes. And up here, this is Canada, above Michigan. Okay? So it's also not really on the East Coast, but it's the eastern half of the U.S. Some of the states on the western half of the U.S. have a lot more straight lines. These are just some of them. You know, if you look at them, they have a few little bumps and things like that, but these states are generally a little more straight. So why is that? Why is that? Because when the U.S. became a country, it was all on the east. The 13 colonies were all on the east coast, and those communities generally just formed on their own, right? Like, they didn't know they were going to be one country one day. So Massachusetts was like its own place, and New Jersey was its own place, and they never ever thought that they would unite to become a country. So they just had these shapes that just naturally just happened just because people moved there and they said, this is our land, right? This is our land. Some of it is those natural borders like rivers or mountains that were there. But anyway, then what happened was in the 1800s, there was a president, this guy, James K. Polk. He was president from 1845 to 1849. He was the 11th president of the United States. And he had a promise, because when he became president, the U.S. only came out to about here, right? It didn't go all the way. And he said one of the promises he made was that he was going to send people to start settling some of these states on the west so that the U.S. would go all the way out to the Pacific Ocean. And he started that work. He started that where a lot of these territories started becoming states. And if they didn't become states while he was president, they started the process of becoming territories. And eventually they became states. And so they had a lot more strategy in mind in a lot of these cases, that they were going to make this part to this line, and it was easier to make them into straighter lines. They're not perfectly straight lines, but they're straighter, aren't they? So it's interesting when you think about the funny shapes of our states that make up our country. It's part of the story of who we are as a country for these last 250 years. Okay? If you're interested in that, remember the book is called How the States Got Their Shapes. It's also a TV show that they made a long time ago that maybe you can find on the internet. Okay? So think about that. Think about that, and I'll see you next time.